Okay, finally, after weeks of waiting for the block, waiting for the temperature to warm up outside so I could go out and rinse it off, I'm finally to the point of preparing this for paint. So I'm putting the cleaner degreaser on, and I brushed it with a big brush, and I'm using a toothbrush to get into all the nooks and crannies here. I've got the fire going so that I can get it up to 70 degrees for the next step, which is the rust preventer. And so I'm going to do all sides of this block, except well, I guess I'll do a little bit on the front here where it's exposed, and then rinse it off. I'm going to wash it out with soapy water because I had the cam bearings put in, and I had this, I don't know what they call it, put in a shot blast or something, and so you got to make sure you get all the remnants of that out. It's supposed to be a lot easier to clean up than sandblasting, so I'm going to wash it out with soapy water, and I've got some brushes to run in and out of the cam journals and places. So hopefully this will be ready for paint later today or tomorrow. Okay, there it is, all rusty. They say that's something to be celebrated. It's supposed to do that, I guess, but it feels kind of bad after I spent all the time and money to get it perfectly cleaned off. But now I got to put the metal prep coat on. Okay, the rust preventer coat is on, and it's dry, kind of tacky to the finger, but doesn't leave a mark. So I guess that's time to put the engine enamel on the top of that now. A little worried about this paint. I don't know if you can see it there, but I couldn't keep it mixed up. The color kept separating, even though I mixed for a substantial amount of time, and I kept stirring as I painted. But even as it dries, you can kind of see the color separation. So I hope it's going to be okay. Well, this is the engine block after a second coat of paint. I'm not real happy with the paint. You're not supposed to shake it, so I stirred it. And the second you stop stirring it, it starts to separate. So I stirred it for a very long time, and I started brushing it on, and every time I went to dip the brush back in, I had to stir it again. And it's even separated on the block. I don't know if you can see it or not. But now I'm not sure what else to do. I think I'm just going to go with it. I wish it was better. Okay, waiting for the block paint to dry. So I'm going to try to clean up a bunch of these other little projects I have going. And I have new hoses for the, I guess it's the PCV or EGR, I don't remember, emissions valve they call it. And I guess the new hoses look like they could match the old hoses. You got the new diaphragm to go in there, and that's cleaned up. It was just waiting for the parts to come in, so I'll put that guy together. Okay, I have the valve put back together, new diaphragm installed, and hoses on the way they came off, as near as I can tell anyway. I thought for sure I had the wire type hose clamps for here, but I can't find them, so I have to dig around more for that. Those are the style I'm looking for. Okay, now for the distributor, I have the new O-ring that goes around here. I've got the new connection here from the low tension coil to the points. This one was hanging by a thread here, so I can put that in and finish up the distributor. Okay, I have this back together. It's always a good idea to check that your points are not always, or your connection here isn't always grounded through the points or a bad connection. I actually had it screwed up the first time I tried it, but now I can turn this and open and close the points, and it works correctly. There's a mixture of parts between the new points and the original points and mounting hardware to get it to work right. Okay, I put the new needle valve in and measured the float level, and it was substantially off, so I was wasn't sure I had the right measurement, so I went back and put the old needle valve in and remeasured, and it was pretty close to in spec, which is between 1/8 and 3/16 of an inch. So I had to put in drill bits and bend this substantially to get it into spec. But I guess the spec is, it's not really critical to have it very close, but I put it between the two limits that they list, so hopefully that's going to be okay. It was the same thing on both of them. Okay, I have the butterfly in, and I held it up to the light, and I can just barely see light through when I have it fully closed. It's not closed right now because I put the idle screw in for safety so I don't jam it into the throat. But there's one thing I'm not sure about. When I put the throttle plate in, there's some play where you can slide on the old one here. You can slide the throttle shaft back and forth, and the disc will still close in the throttle throat. So I kind of centered it, but now I'm wondering so what happened was when I have a little bit of the shoulder sticking out like that, which I think is good because when I put the nut on, I don't want it to hit on the body and pull the throttle plate into the side of the throat in here. But what I don't know is maybe I should have pulled it all the way to have more room. So I think I'm going to put this other one together loosely and see if I can determine how that should be done. Okay, one carburetor is done. It took me a long time, probably about 3 hours, just to put this back together. It's tricky getting this in. You got to get the rubber O-ring. It's really more than an O-ring, but you got to get that in right and get the tube inside of it. And then this nut wanted to cross thread, so I ended up taking it out a few times and putting in the old one to make sure I knew the angle that it was supposed to go in. I wasn't sure if it was maybe tipped a little bit or not. So I played with that for quite a while. It took me a while to get the jet centered and put together, but I think I finally have it together and in a workable state. This guy, it's hard to do with one hand here. This guy drops like it's supposed to now. So I'm still a little troubled by this shaft. So here I have this together with the throttle plate loose. And so you can see that the shaft can slide while the plate doesn't move in there, which means that this shoulder comes in and out a bit. And so I wasn't quite sure where to tighten this down. Do I want it like this or do I want it like that? But I finally decided this guy here, the throttle shaft has I don't know if it's a brass washer that rides up against the linkage. And so that washer goes over the fat part of the shoulder here. And so I definitely don't want to have it in too far so that the tightening the nut causes it to pull the shaft and pull the throttle disc into the sidewall of the throat. And so if I push it all the way over, then that washer is just going to be flapping here and really won't do much. So I think I'm going to put the linkage on and just pull it back just a hair so that washer is touching both sides, but with no force when this nut is tightened down. And then I can get the second carburetor together